Good day, everyone, and welcome to our histology review series, where today we will look at nervous tissue. As always, our references are Junqueira's textbook on histology and Netter's Atlas of Histology. First, we start with the meninges, which are the coverings of the central and in some parts of the peripheral nervous system. The outermost covering is called the dura mater, labeled here as number 1. The dura mater covers the brain, the spinal cord, and even the optic nerves. It is a dense, fibrous connective tissue consisting of interlacing bundles of collagen and elastic fibers in association with flattened fibroblasts. Below the dura mater is the arachnoid mater, labeled here as number 3, the arachnoid mater, and below it, labeled as number 5, the pia mater. The arachnoid and the pia mater are thinner and more delicate compared to the dura, and together, the arachnoid and the pia mater are known as the leptomeninges. A useful mnemonic for that is LAP. The leptomeninges are comprised of the arachnoid and the pia mater. The subarachnoid space, which is the space below the arachnoid mater, as the term suggests, is labeled here as number 2. It is filled with CSF or cerebrospinal fluid, and it also contains branches of cerebral arteries and veins. Shown here is a schematic of the dura mater reflected away, as well as the leptomeninges covering the brain of a monkey in the histologic section below. To recall, number 1 here is the dura mater. 2 is the subarachnoid space, which contains cerebrospinal fluid. The subarachnoid space, as the term implies, being the space under the arachnoid matter. The arachnoid matter labeled here as number 3. Number 4 here is a lumen of a cerebral artery because the subarachnoid space also contains some cerebral arteries and veins. And labeled here as number 5, below the subarachnoid space is the pia mater. Again, the leptomeninges collectively are the arachnoid and the pia mater. And finally, below all of these covering, below all of these meninges is the nervous tissue. Nervous tissue labeled as number 6. Next, we go into the cerebrum. The cerebrum consists of two hemispheres with an outer cortex of gray matter, labeled here as number 1, the gray matter, and a central and deeper region of white matter, labeled here as number 3. The cerebral cortex is 1.5 to 4.5 millimeters thick. The gray matter, the outer gray matter, consists mostly of nerve cell bodies, unmyelinated neuronal processes, and glial cells. Whereas the white matter below consists of tracts of myelinated nerve fibers and associated glia. Glial cells are the supporting cells of the central nervous system. The CNS contains a rich vascular supply consisting of a profuse network of capillaries, which are typically more abundant outside here in the gray matter. In the spinal cord, the gray matter is localized internally, and it is enveloped by an external layer of white matter. Shown here is a light micrograph of cerebrum. We use a special stain here for the cerebrum. This is called a Luxol fast blue stain, which is specifically a stain used for cerebral tissue. And below it is the corresponding schema of a mid-sagittal section of the head. We already mentioned that number 1 here is the gray matter. And below it, number 3 is the white matter. Number 2 is a blood vessel. In the schema below, 4 is the medulla oblongata, which is part of the brainstem, which we shall discuss later on. And 5 posteriorly is the cerebellum. Speaking of the cerebellum is a bilaterally symmetric part of the brain. Its surface, as we can see here in the schema and below it in the light micrograph, is extensively folded, and it possesses thin transverse folds known as folia. Folia because they resemble the leaves of a tree. The cerebellum consists of a surface layer of cortex of gray matter and a medullary center of white matter. The outer cortex has a remarkably uniform trilaminar organization, and it consists of an outer molecular layer. This is the pinkish part over here in the light micrograph, an outer molecular layer, and an inner granular layer. There is also a middle monolayer of large pear-shaped neurons known as Purkinje cells. The molecular layer is a pale-stained zone with few nerve cell bodies. It contains a network of profusely branching dendrites of the Purkinje cells, and it represents mainly a synaptic field. Shown here is a schematic of the midsection of the same head we saw in the previous slide and a light micrograph of the cerebellum. To review, shown in number 1 is the corpus callosum, which is the central connection of the two hemispheres of the brain. Number 2 is the pituitary gland. 3 is the white matter, the central white matter of the cerebellum. 4 is the inner granular cell layer, the inner granular cell layer. And number 5 is the outer molecular layer. Though not shown here, we remember that between the outer molecular layer and the inner granular cell layer, there is actually a thin layer containing Purkinje cells. But it is not shown here in the light micrograph. We move closer into the neuron itself. The neuronal cell body is the trophic center of the nerve cell, and it varies considerably in size and shape depending on the type of the neuron and its specific location in the CNS. Reflecting its role in genetic regulation and transcription, the nucleus of a typical neuron, as shown here in number 4 in the electromicrograph, is euchromatic with small patches of peripherally displaced heterochromatin immediately under the nuclear envelope. The nucleus, such as this one, is usually spherical or ovoid, and its size is large relative to its surrounding pericardion. Shown here is a schematic of the main types of cells in the brain and the electromicrograph of the same cerebral cortex, showing a neuron in the gray matter. Number 1 here is the ependyma, and 2 is an astrocyte. 3 is the dendrite of the neuron. Of course, this would be the nucleus of the neuron itself. 5 is an endothelium of a capillary. 6 is the axon of the neuronal cell. We recall that the covering of the axon is the Schwann cell. And the Schwann cells are actually projections of a supporting cell called the oligodendrocyte, labeled here as number 7. Dominating the cytoplasm of neurons are multiple flattened cisternae of rough endoplasmic reticulum with numerous free ribosomes between the cisternae. The free ribosomes are the darkly stained dots in between the spaghetti-looking like folds of rough endoplasmic reticulum. These cisternae collectively correspond to a substance called the Nissl substance, which is a basophilic aggregate seen only in light micrograph. The Nissl substance is the collection of rough endoplasmic reticulum, which is basophilic and seen in light micrographs. The major function of these free ribosomes and the ribosomes attached to RER is protein synthesis for internal use, as well as for export. Neurons also have a highly developed Golgi complex with multiple stacks of flattened sacs and associated vesicles and vacuoles. The Golgi complex is responsible for packaging and concentrating secretory products, as well as post-translational modification of macromolecules. Shown here is a schematic as well as an electromicrograph of a neuron in the cerebral cortex. One, shown in the schema, is a dendrite of the neuronal cell. Two, of course, is the axon, shown here being unmyelinated. Of course, we know that it is myelinated by Schwann cells. The part of the axon that comes into contact with the soma or the body of the neuron is called the axon hillock. The axon hillock. In electromicrograph, we can see the darkly stained ovoid structures here with internal cisterns. These are the mitochondria. 5 here is the Golgi complex, which is composed of multiple stacks. 6 is the cisternal rough endoplasmic reticulum, the rough endoplasmic reticulum, with the free ribosomes interspersed between the cisterns. And 7 here is a nucleolus, a nucleolus. Synapses are specialized sites for chemical or electrical transmission between neurons or between a neuron and another effector cell. In chemical synapses, presynaptic and postsynaptic membrane specializations contain electron-dense material that extends into the underlying cytoplasm and is usually thicker on the postsynaptic side of the synapse. With arrival of the action potential, the synaptic vesicles, which are shown here in the electromicrograph as number 2, the synaptic vesicles fuse with the presynaptic membrane, shown here in number 3, and when they fuse with the presynaptic membrane, they discharge their content of neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft, which is the space between the pre and the post-synaptic membranes. The neurotransmitters then diffuse across the cleft to interact with receptor molecules on the postsynaptic membrane. The postsynaptic membrane, shown here in the EM as number 4. This eventually leads to a change in the membrane conductance of the postsynaptic membrane. To recall, we have here a schema and high magnification electromicrograph of a synapse in the brain. One is the axon, where the action potential travels. Two are the synaptic vesicles, which are triggered by the action potential to fuse with the presynaptic membrane, shown here in EM as number 3. And when the synaptic vesicles fuse with the presynaptic membrane, they discharge their neurotransmitter contents into the synaptic cleft, which is the space between the pre and the postsynaptic membranes. 4 is the postsynaptic membranes, and they contain receptors which receive, which attach the neurotransmitters, thereby affecting the particular change which the neurotransmitter is designed for. Here we also see, incidentally, a mitochondrion. 5 is the outer membrane of the mitochondrion, and internally we have the cristae of the mitochondrion. While the blood-brain barrier restricts the passage of large molecules from the capillary lumen to the surrounding tissue, it allows a free passage of gases and select molecules such as glucose into the nervous tissue. The barrier protects neurons in the CNS from toxins, from drugs, and other potential harmful substances that may enter the bloodstream. Most antibiotics, such as penicillin, do not cross the blood-brain barrier. A few regions of the brain, however, are devoid of a blood-brain barrier and contain capillaries that are highly permeable, and these include the pineal gland. Let's write that down. The pineal gland, the posterior pituitary, and parts of the hypothalamus. So these are select regions of the central nervous system which are non-selective to the crossing across the blood-brain barrier. Shown here is a schema of the blood-brain barrier and an electromicrograph of a capillary in the cerebral cortex. Number 1 here is an astrocyte foot process. An astrocyte foot process. Number 2 is a mitochondrion. 3 here is a tight, the encircled structure is a tight junction between endothelial cells. 4 is a nucleus of an endothelial cell, and we can show here the darkly stained euchromatin in the nucleus of the endothelial cell. 5 is a nucleus of an astrocyte. And 6 is an RBC, or an erythrocyte, in the lumen of the capillary. The choroid plexus is a specialized tissue in the roof of the third and fourth ventricles and the walls of the lateral ventricles. It produces cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, which circulates within the ventricles, the central canal of the spinal cord, and the subarachnoid space. The choroid plexus consists of highly branched, leaf-like folds of vascularized pia mater covered by a modified ependyma. The modified ependyma, shown here in the light micrograph, is labeled as number 4, and it is composed of simple cuboidal or low columnar epithelium. It is highly secretory and ion transporting. It rests on a thin basement membrane. Shown here is a schematic of the ventricles of the cerebrospinal fluid system. Number 1 here is the lateral ventricle. We actually have two lateral ventricles, one on either hemisphere. And eventually, the lateral ventricles fuse to deposit the cerebrospinal fluid into the third ventricle. That which is labeled here as number 2 is the third ventricle. And the third ventricle will eventually steep down into the fourth ventricle. The fourth ventricle over here, the space anterior to the cerebellum. We've already mentioned that number 4 here in the light micrograph is the modified ependyma, composed of simple cuboidal or low columnar epithelium. 5 here are capillaries, and 6 is supportive loose connective tissue. Descending now from the brain into the spinal cord, whereas the orientation of the gray matter and the white matter of the brain is such that the gray matter lies external to the inner white matter. In the spinal cord, this orientation is inverted, it's flipped. In the spinal cord, we see that labeled here as number 5, the white matter is external. It's outer to the inner or the deep gray matter. So again, in the spinal cord, the white matter lies external to the inner gray matter. The white matter of the spinal cord, labeled here again as number 5, consists of ascending and descending tracts of myelinated nerve fibers, whereas the inner gray matter consists mostly of cell bodies and unmyelinated nerve fibers. The gray matter has two ventral, meaning anterior horns, two ventral or anterior horns, and two dorsal or posterior horns connected at the center by an isthmus of gray commissures. The cell bodies of motor neurons are easily identified in the anterior horn due to their relatively large size and the nissal substance within their cytoplasm. Sensory nerve fibers enter the spinal cord via the dorsal horns, and motor nerve fibers exit from the ventral horns as spinal nerves. Shown here is a light micrograph of the spinal cord at low and high magnification. To recall, labeled here as number 1 is the ventral or the anterior horn. In anatomic orientation, we recall that ventral means in front or anterior, and dorsal means posterior or to the back. 2 here, labeled as 2, is the pia mater, the innermost of the 3 meninges. Number 3, in high magnification, this is the nucleolus of the motor neuron, nucleolus, and 4 is the axon of the motor neuron. Going back to lower magnification, 5 is the external white matter, and 6 here is the dorsal or the posterior horn. The central nervous system is comprised of the brain and the spinal cord, and the rest of the nerves projecting from these are called the peripheral nervous system. Internodal regions of myelinated nerves in the PNS or the peripheral nervous system are surrounded by concentric layers of Schwann cell plasma membrane that wrap around the peripheral nerve during development. Myelin is a lipoprotein. Myelin here is actually shown as number 5. Myelin is a lipoprotein wrapping with a high proportion of lipid 2 protein. The high lipid component of myelin consists of phospholipids, glycolipids, and cholesterol. Surrounding nerves, the perineurium consists of a supportive connective tissue and metabolically active perineural cells that restrict the passage of a wide range of macromolecular substances, thereby regulating the internal microenvironment of the nerve. Shown here in number 1 is a Schwann cell. This is a Schwann cell. And 2 is a mitochondrion. 3 is a perineural cell, which is a supportive cell. 3, the perineural cell. 4 are collagen fibrils of the endoneurium. And 5 is the myelin sheath. Finally, 6 are neurofilaments. Neurofilaments. The association of Schwann cells to nerve fibers differs between myelinated and unmyelinated nerve fibers. In the peripheral nervous system, nerve fibers of small diameter, composed of both axons and dendrites, are grouped together by a Schwann cell. In this electromicrograph, Number one here is an unmyelinated nerve fiber. And number two is a Schwann cell, which we can see either completely or partially envelopes the nerve fibers in groove-like invaginations. These invaginations we can see are open to the surface. The Schwann cells associated with the unmyelinated nerve fibers may invest as many as 20, and their entire outer surface is covered by a basal lamina, shown here as number 4. The surrounding endoneural connective tissue contains collagen fibrils. Number 5 here are the collagen fibrils in the surrounding endoneural connective tissue. And unmyelinated fibers have conduction speeds of 0.2 to 2 meters per second. To recall, this is an electromicrograph of a Schwann cell enveloping and associated with several unmyelinated nerve fibers. One is an unmyelinated nerve fiber over here. Here is another one, an unmyelinated nerve fiber. And the invaginating cell here, the groove-like invaginations are the Schwann cell. 3 are synaptic vesicles. And number 4 is the surrounding basal lamina. The basal lamina surrounds the entirety of the Schwann cell. And externally, in the endoneural connective tissue, 5 are the collagen fibrils. Ganglia are aggregations of nerve cell bodies located outside the central nervous system. They include sensory ganglia of cranial nerves, dorsal root ganglia of spinal nerves, and autonomic ganglia located at various sites in the periphery. All ganglia are derived from the neural crest. Nerve cell bodies within the cranial or the spinal sensory ganglia are typically pseudo-unipolar in shape. Pseudo-unipolar in shape. Whereas those in autonomic ganglia are commonly multipolar. Again, nerve cell bodies in the cranial or the spinal sensory ganglia are usually pseudo-unipolar, whereas those in autonomic ganglia are multipolar. Autonomic ganglia usually contain cholinergic synapses between preganglionic and postganglionic neurons, whereas synapses do not occur in the spinal ganglia. Within a ganglion, a single layer of neural crest-derived satellite cells, shown here in light micrograph, labeled as number 1 is a satellite cell. The satellite cells surround each nerve cell body. Satellite cells are modified Schwann cells, and they form a continuous investment around the cell bodies of ganglion cells. One here, again, a satellite cell, and 2 is a lipofuscin stain inside the perikaryon of a ganglion cell body. 3 here, the linear structure here is actually an axon, an axon. 4 is a nucleus of a neuron, and 5 is the characteristic darkly staining Nissl substance, a Nissl substance inside a neuron.